All right, thank you, Sean. So yeah, as Sean said, Young and I will co-moderate this panel, and we're doing that sort of in the spirit of this being the East-West panel. And the idea here is we're going to be talking about what are some of the differences, what are some of the similarities in business practices, in industry structures between the West and the East. And of course, this isn't a stark dichotomy. Obviously, we're talking here today about the global industry, right? The global music industry, and so many of these players, in fact, have all sorts of interests and influence and business crossing borders around the world. But in broad strokes, we want to explore on this panel what are some of the differences in terms of how these industries, say, in East Asia versus in some of the Western markets operate, and what are some of the similarities. So on our panel, immediately to my left, we are honored to have Kristi HWANG. So Kristi was born in Seoul and worked as the secretary of the managing director of Mechanical Trading Business Division for LG, and then as legal counsel, open export and import affairs for Unitech Limited in the early 90s. She then moved into the role of domestic legal counsel for Sunwoo Inc. and later general affairs in the sales department for EMI Music Korea, and has continued her successful career in the music industry with Warner Chappell Music Korea, where she worked as a manager for copyright royalty and sync licensing, creative A&R, and finance for 13 years from 2002 to 2015, and since 2016 she has been Secretary General for the Korea Music Publishers Association and founder of the music and design company for global contents, Farm Inc. Also manager for Creative Sync for Sony Music Publishing Korea. So tremendously broad set of music industry credentials, and am very honored to have you on the panel, Kristi. To Kristi's left, we have Dwiki DHARMAWAN. Did I pronounce it correctly? Okay. Dwiki is among Indonesia's most gifted and celebrated music personalities. He's a multi-genre keyboardist, skilled composer, producer, and a conscientious peace activist as well, and so very committed to ecological preservation, which we all know in Indonesia is a pressing and very important issue. So Dwiki has been in the music industry for more than 40 years and has performed in more than 80 countries, and remains one of his country's most popular and respected industry stalwarts. He's considered in Indonesia to be a kind of cultural icon. So again, tremendously honored to have him on the panel. Dwiki is now, I'm trying to find it here. He has so many accomplishments. It would take up the whole panel, honestly, to go through Dwiki's bio. But Dwiki is where is that? Dwiki is not just a performer, He is actually the director, and again, I can't find it here, Dwiki, I apologize. But of your collecting society in Indonesia. So, all right, I will move on then, and I would like to introduce Sirona Elton. Again, very honored to have Sirona on the panel. She's an experienced music industry professional and an educator. So again, as I was talking about on the last panel, how important it is to have that interaction between academy and industry, and Sirona lives that role. She's a full professor and director of the Music Industry Program and Associate Dean of Administration at the University of Miami Frost School of Music, also a Yamaha Master Educator. Additionally, she serves as the head of educational partnerships for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, also known as the MLC, which is a new collective in the US that we can get into and talk about a bit on this panel. In this role, Sirona directs the MLC's efforts to engage future members of the music industry currently studying music business and related subjects at colleges and universities around the country. And Sirona has worked for a number of major record labels, including Warner Music, EMI, and has provided consulting services to Sony, Universal, Zumba Fitness, and other music-related companies. All right. Well, that is the panel. We'd like to start out by, I guess, tossing out to the panel, and maybe I won't toss it out directly to a particular individual, but just toss it out generally and get the conversation started. I'd like to talk about what I think may be a key cultural difference between Western, sort of the relationship between artists and labels, and managers and labels in the West and in Asia, and I guess particularly with a focus on Korea. And so I guess I'll set that up by just stating that in the West, typically what happens is, you know, if an artist is discovered, I mean, things are, of course, evolving and changing all the time. But so back in my day when I was working in the music industry, what would typically happen is you would have a band or an artist that would kind of be working on their own, or maybe, you know, start out working with a manager that found them, thought they had some talent, thought they had some marketability, and the artists would kind of hone their chops, go out and play, pay their dues, and kind of build up a name for themselves. Eventually they'd catch the attention of somebody at a record label who would sign them, and the label then would continue to develop the artist. But the artist essentially kind of had begun that process of development on their own. Importantly, if the artist was working with a manager, and a manager would typically be the artist's advocate in the deal or the relationship with the label. The manager would go to the label and fight for the artist's, on the artist's behalf, right? For getting better deal terms, for trying to get the label to invest more in promotion, for trying to get the label not to shelf the artist's recording, that sort of thing. My understanding, and maybe Young can speak to this more, is that it's a very different process with respect to K-pop. Maybe you can introduce a little bit about how that is typically approached in Korea, and then we can kind of throw it out to the panel for adding more color to this conversation.
Yeah, adding to your point, sometimes lawyers become managers of the artists in the U.S. Because they're experts at protecting their clients. In Korea, it's very different, where they pretty much do a 360 deal, where from the beginning training to casting to training to just promotion to marketing to being an agent, producing music, managing, they do everything. So I would say most labels are like that. There are some cases, rare cases, they're separated, but and also because as these labels, when they develop these artists, they're really young. They sometimes are oblivious. They don't know what they're doing, so they guide everything from like how to even bow, how to even talk to, do the interviews. It's the whole like an Olympic training going on. So I guess that's very different, I guess. I mean, there are cases like in Sync and Lou Pearlman, did something similar to that, where he was controlling everything. But in Korea, it's very more structured. There's a department, casting department, training department, and these are like specialized in these areas of what is the best way to train. What is the best way to put their artists out to do the management and things like that. So.
Yeah, and another example in the U.S. was a producer named Maurice Starr, who did like New Edition and I think New Kids on the Block. Sort of, again, maybe this was proto K-pop, the early boy band model, and I'm sure it's been going back. I mean, the Monkees were kind of a created, but that hasn't been the norm so much in the West as it is, I think, in Korea. So it may also be very genre specific. So I'd love to throw this out. Is there anyone on the panel who has any thoughts on these differences or similarities? Please. Oh, you did? Oh, you prepared a presentation. Perfect. Let's hear it. Yeah, yes, please.
It's great to be here with you today. I'm Kristi from the Sony Music Publishing Korea. At Sony, I'm in charge of sync license for advertisement agency, and also I have my own publishing company, Global Content Farm. I'm in charge of demo pitching and online song session with foreign writers. And additionally, I manage illustration and motion picture graphic company with my sister. I'm very excited to give you speech today. My topic is the role of publishers. But when I was organizing the data, I found myself creating a job description. Let's take a look. What process do music copyright holders and writers go through to protect and make profits from their music works? The main purpose of a publisher is to support composer and counseling taxation and make profits to them. I consist of the seven categories. First is the contract, and two is copyright protection and promotion and marketing, licensing and negotiation, copyright registration, revenue tracking and distribution, and global expansion. Let's take a look at first, the contract. Only if there is a copyrighted song can a publishing company make business. Publisher can contract the signing with composers and lyricists and producers, and also contract signing catalog. And also these days, some songwriters sell their songs to big publisher or IP companies or venture capital and get big money once and transfer their rights. We call this buyout deal. If you can Google it, can find easy posted news like Phil Collins and band Genesis. They sold their catalog to the Concord Music Group, $300 million, and Bob Dylan sold his catalog to the Sony Music and $150 million. That is all the buyout deal. And Neil Young also sold 50% to his publishing right to the Hypnosis Songs Fund for $150 million. Because of their taxation purpose or estate planning, and many writers these days sell their catalog. After acquisition right, we can start business with the right. I want to show you the publisher's income type. Our major income type is mechanical, performance, synchronization, digital, and other. The copyright is intangible asset, so there is no visible product like CD, album, LP, DVD. So CD or LP has retail price, but copyright is difficult to set a price. So publisher in the world decided percentage rate from the product. When selling the product, publisher or songwriters can receive money based on the royalty rate. For example, royalty rate is among the major companies, Sony or Warner or Universal, they 5.4% they pay the royalty, mechanical royalty, and in Korea, Komka, they collect the 9% from wholesale price and collecting the royalty and send to the publisher and songwriters. I explain more the income details source based on income type on licensing chapter. This is the monitoring piracy. There are many platforms in Korea, Korean outside for songwriter, publisher must monitor and platforms. Recently, due to the popularity of Korean drama, many drama works are being aired through OTT. Especially Netflix and Disney Plus or YouTube originals. So before launching original series, the OTT have to get the music license to use. If it's not an original series, the responsibility for licensing lies with the drama production. So these are cases where the song is aired without approval. And YouTube automatically display music owner's information, who publisher is, who master owner is, etc. But they cannot cover 100%. So we are monitoring to see if these are any video uploaded without a music license. If authorized use discovered by us, we find who is producer, and to solve a piracy matter or request to take down their online. This is just we can ask the cessation of illegal use, the click customer center, and provide proof, and we have copyrights or owner, and ask take down the video. And we can take legal action based on the copyright law, and copyright law in prison up to 5 years or a fine of up to 50 million Korean won under the Copyright Act. I bring this data from the IFPI. IFPI is the International Federation of the Phonograph Industry based in Switzerland. Look at the purpose and process driving long-term creative and commercial success. On the ground, record labels are building teams of skilled executives who can support and enhance an artist's creative vision, while it's also understanding the consumer market that surrounds each project. The red circle, A&R development part is related to the publishers. Normally in recording company use A&R as department name, and publishing company use creative. A&R stands for the artist and repertoire, and it is department in charge of record production. And our creative team has to contract potential songwriters and demo pitching to label, and if need, have to arrange a song camp with foreign writers and Korean songwriters for song pitching. And regarding songwriting camp, we must select which composer is suitable for the project, and if the participating composer living outside Korea, creative team have to make a reservation, flight, and hotel. Also have to rent recording studio for co-working during making demo songs. And sync license for recorded music. License team has to promote to ad agency and drama production, etc. This is demo pitching process. The songwriting camp. Foreign writers come to Korea and collaborate with many other writers. There are opportunities to form the K-pop relationships and networks. This is for making income from sync license. The license team send monthly new song list or top 100 list, social media top 40 song list, and commercial hit list or TikTok hit song list to ad agency and other clients. The license type, the synchronization is the advertisement, TV drama, movie, game, and mechanical is from remake, remix, song cover, karaoke, CD, album, and digital license is TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and platform, digital platform, and performance is from concert, streaming, radio, sports complex, and broadcasting station, etc. And media term territory, we negotiate depending on the conditions. Synchronization these days is market extended because of Netflix and Disney Plus, and YouTube Original. They make over 20 Korean dramas in a year. We have to copyright registration for royalty collection. We do song registration, PRO, is Performing Rights Organization. In Korea, we have KOMCA and KOSCAP is existed. And overseas is the ASCA, BMI, PRS, JASRAC, GEMMA, and over 62 the performing society in 58 countries. Registered copyright provides legal protection to the songwriters and serves as a basis for the songwriter to prove that the work has been copied or used without permission. This is for process for KOMCA membership writers song registration. For overseas royalty collection, Korean writers have to contract with global publisher directly or through the local publisher. And receive song data from writers. Publisher has to register song to own the system and send it to global branch, and the branch send the song data to performing society, PRO. So for example, this is KOMCA data and BTS DNA, and lyricist A, also lyricist has 6, composer 6, and they make both. And this same data in the ASCAP in the USA Public Performing Society. Same 6 writers participate in composing and the lyrics. You can see the DNA and alternate title, and we can see the song data from. This is a kind of ID from the song. We can see the Hive original publisher for this song, and Sony ATV is the sub-publisher in USA. This is a case of Korean songwriters. As an example, for collecting royalty from overseas, Spotify digital royalties sent to publisher 2 and PRO. The digital income has 2 types of right, mechanical and performing royalties. Download goes to mechanical income type, and streaming goes to performing income type. So, based on performing society, international regulation in the world, according to the standard set by CISA, Confederation of International Copyright Administration, 58 countries and 62 performing society for protection royalty income for writers. Performing royalty goes to 50% to writers directly, and other 50% goes to publishers. So KOMCA receive overseas royalties, performing royalty relate instead of Korean writers, and then pay them after deduction KOMCA commission. KOMCA for collecting performing royalty, they hire monitoring company. We have Korea. We have over 200 TV channels and radio stations. This is the tracking method. As an example, process of BMAP. BMAP is music operating company, and they find missed revenue, improve client processes, and increase profitability by monitoring music usage. They use fingerprint recognition, finds music used in the advertisement, broadcasting programs, and radio play, and they create a Q sheet. The Q sheet is provided to KOMCA, and based on this data, KOMCA distributes performing royalty to songwriters and publishers. This is KOMCA payment schedule. Based on the payment schedule is the performing, for example, performing royalty receive January, February, March, and then pay 6 months later in September. And digital is collection January, February, March, and pay to 5 months later. This is the KOMCA total revenue movement over past 5 years. For your information, in Korea, KOMCA handles all royalties, mechanical, performing, synchronization, digital, and print. Songwriters and publishers in Korea only can receive royalty, KOMCA or KOSCAP. And KOMCA market share is 85%, and KOSCAP is almost 15%. during 5 years, total revenue is grows 74%, and digital is 135%, and album sales is 215% growth. According to Kumka revenue, all writers and publishers in Korea related to K-pop is increased double times during 5 years. And this is digital distribution rate. The rate, DPS is the Spotify, Melon, Box, iTunes, Amazon Music, we call DPS. They have streaming and download is a little bit different. DPS collects on the streaming 35%, and record label like SM Entertainment, Hive, Universal, Sony, they get the 48.25%. And only the Kumka songwriter has 10%, and performers get 6.25% on streaming. Performer is to include the artist, playlist, guitarist, or pianist, etc. This is global extension. It's taken from Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy in Korea. The graph is exported album sales growth during 5 years. Still, Japan and China market is number 1 and 2. Well, during 5 days, North America market is growing until the 17.2%. YouTube, as you can see, K-pop consumer is only 10% in Korea, and 90% is outside of Korea. And this is global paid music streaming subscription over time, and 13 years ago, only 8 million people subscriber, and the growth of the 600 million more. This is global record music industry revenue during over 20 years. Graph is I taken from the IFPI. This last year result. Red color is the physical sales, CD, LP, and mint color is streaming and download graph. According to new device pulse, and until 2014, music industry is getting down, but according to the streaming service is growing, music market is getting active. Look at the pie. 67% is for streaming market. This is IFPI, also the IFPI report. It coincided with Spotify announcing their launching and scheduling 85 new market. So, take a look. This is top 10 music market in the world, and almost 98% United States, Japan, and Germany, United Kingdom, and only Korea is ranked 7th last year, and only the 0.43%. And also the IFPI report last year, the music publishing market leaders, Sony Music Publishing, and number 2 Universal, and 3 Warner Chappell, and 4 Cobalt, and 5 BMG Right Management. Finishing up, once upon a time, piracy was key topic here, and these days, serious concern about the potential for AI. AI synthesized voice technology to be used at the scale to cover song and attempt to replace artists, for example. Meanwhile, focus on the way musical AIs are trained. Most of these AI systems acquire the essential basis of knowledge from they develop their own IP by essentially training on vast quantities of copyrighted content, and they are not providing any compensation to the people who produce that indispensable source materials. The bottom line is a lot of AI developers are just ignoring the ethics, the ingesting the creative work of others, or they are simply justifying it with what we view as a dangerous distortion of the idea of fair use. This is for AI cover, and the AI technology that replaced the artist's voice is already working. The voice is not Jimin, but they're almost the same. Can you listen to the music? 네. 클릭하면은 Oh, really?
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so nice overview of the Korean market as it in the connection with the global music industry, and teeing up the AI panel, which will be coming a little later this afternoon. Next, Dwiki DHARMAWAN, who in my introductory remarks, I just simply didn't have his society, but he's Secretary General of PAPPRI. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
In Indonesia, please.
Thank you. It's an honor and great to be here. Hello, everyone. I will start with Indonesia, my country. Indonesia consists of 17,000 islands, the biggest archipelagos in the world. We have population 280 million, and one of the big five in population, also big five in size of the country. We have more than 600 languages and dialects. Even in one island, if we walk 15 kilometers, the language and dialect is already different. But we have unite with one language. It's called Bahasa Indonesia, or Indonesia language. It's national language. So each region has its own fans with local languages. But we have Indonesian popular music also, Indonesian pop. We use Indonesia language, Bahasa Indonesia. But I think Indonesia really have to emulate the progress of music industry of Taiwan music, China, Hong Kong, and of course K-pop, Korea. In Indonesia, we have the uniqueness of how Eastern and versus Western roles of labels, publishers, management, and unions. Of course, in Indonesia have its own practically what we make in practically. Now, for example, in Indonesia exists like big label, international label like Sony Music, Warner Music, Universal, and two of biggest local label like Musica and Trinity. But they have challenge with the indie, because some artists, some musicians, which contracted with the label, they want to increase the artistic freedom. They feel if they are with label, the artistic freedom is limited. So indie labels is growing in Indonesia, rising and emerging because they need the freedom of the artistic. They want to own the artistic control. They want a flexibility in content, and also maybe need more revenue share. But then after 2010, the big label in Indonesia tried to make collaborative marketing strategies or more offer flexible deals to indie artists, like more indie-friendly approaches. Yes, because the diversity of Indonesia, maybe internationally, Indonesia is more have challenge in world music. And even a lot of Indonesian jazz artists, jazz musicians, quite well known internationally, like the young Joy Alexander, the singer Anggun, who live in France now. But if we look to Taiwan, to China, Hong Kong, and of course Korea, from Indonesia, still not too much renowned internationally, the pop artists. Yeah. A lot of my friends, Asian musicians, especially live in Malaysia, like the legendary Steve Staunton, who would play with Miles Davis, the legendary jazz musician. But now he's living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He makes money from the tour with a lot of Taiwan and Hong Kong artists, like Jai Zhu, like also from Hong Kong, Jackie Chan, something like that. A lot of music directors from Kuala Lumpur, from Malaysia, become the arranger, producer, and music director for the concert of that Taiwanese and Hong Kong artists. It's been still in Southeast Asia, we are still in infrastructure, have to do still more experience. Yeah. Like in publishing, most of publishers in Indonesia still like under the label recording company ARM. Not really independently full, totally professional publisher, but independent. Each label make another entity as a publisher, something like that. So, and also in music union, that's one of the point that we talk here. I think in Japan and in South Korea, is more organized professionally. But in Indonesia, we have the Federation of Indonesian Musician Union. The federation is striving to improve the working condition of musicians. It was established 3 years ago. We had some achievement, but not yet reaching and the goal. So that's the situation. Another thing, we have a lot of success stories now after 2010 from indie artists to become big artists in Indonesia, more than artists came from the labels. And this is one of the uniqueness in Indonesia. So that's some point what we have in Indonesia, and this is really challenging with the big market in Indonesia. We already made that music is one of the very potential business, especially for export, like in Korea. But music still cannot match with the success of our fashion. In creative economy in Indonesia, fashion like what I wear, like batik, is number 1 export. But music is number 16. So still very limited amount of export. When other panelists talk about billion dollar from music in Indonesia, still cannot happen. But in the country, the business is very big, domestically. So my presence here also as a Secretary General of PAPPRI, the Association of Musicians, Songwriters, Artists and Singers in Indonesia, want to learn a lot from all panelists, from our brothers, sisters from Taiwan, from China, Hong Kong, of course, from Korea. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dwiki. All right. So I don't know, Sarona, did you have anything that you wanted to add following up on these presentations?
I'm not sure where to start. Your colleague suggested that I perhaps can contrast a little bit about rights management in the United States, which might be worth making the point. So forgive me if this is fundamental to some of you, but I do find that often in sessions, you have a wide variety of audience members who may or may not be understanding everything said. So I'm going to cover off something rather basic for a minute. the foundation of being able to collect revenue from music being used generally ties back to copyright or other legal rights. And from a US perspective, and it's true in many other countries, you know, under copyright, you have the song composition, which is separate from the sound recording, which is separate from an audiovisual work, otherwise known as a video, okay? So those would be 3 examples of different kinds of work protected by copyright law, looking at the US, for example. Different ways, then, that people consume music, whether you're listening to it at a live show, whether you're streaming, whether you're watching a movie in a movie theater and there's music in the film, all those different ways that music is engaged with and is consumed, you could connect that back to different rights under the copyright law, right? You could listen to a music stream and say, oh, what that was a reproduction, a distribution, and a public performance if it's an interactive, on-demand stream. Those are 3 different rights under the copyright law. So you can, if you wanted to, connect back every way you use music back to the rights that might involve the song, might involve the sound recording, might involve a video, depending on how you are engaging with that music. The way those rights are monetized in some kinds of business activities, the copyright owner is directly involved in negotiating a license for that use. So a term we use in the music industry, synchronization, which is not some language you actually find in the US copyright law. It's a term we just use in the industry. Taking a synchronization license, for example, let's say you were a music publisher in the United States and you're negotiating with a film company to have that song appear in a film. We'd call that a synchronization license, but actually if you looked at that license and looked at the language, it's granting the right to synchronize audio with video, but then to publicly perform that resulting work, to reproduce and distribute that work, to make it available for home use. For example, when you watch it at home and you press, on demand on your cable or, your internet provider. So a synchronization license actually includes a whole bunch of different rights, different permissions granted in that. And that kind of license is generally negotiated directly between a film company and the rights holder. But other kinds of uses of music are not directly negotiated like that typically. They involve an organization broadly considered a collecting society, is a term you could use, except that they don't often just collect. They often grant or administer what we call a blanket license, which is permission to use all of the songs or all of the recordings that that organization might oversee. And so in those cases, the rights holders are getting paid royalties, but the money flows from the party using that music to this society, to then the rights holders. And those societies take very different forms depending on where you are in the world, in terms of common practice. Sometimes in some countries, all the different kinds of uses of music, it's all handled by one organization for the kind where there's a society in the middle of it. In the United States, we are actually, we've broken it down into different rights are handled by different organizations. So in the United States, for example, there are 3 different categories of these societies, and they all collect different kinds of royalties. So we have performing rights organizations that were talked about here, and it sounds like in Korea there is 1. In the United States, there are now 5. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, Global Music Rights, and a new one called AllTrack. They all handle public performance of songs or compositions. And they break up the marketplace, ultimately, into 5 organizations. Separately from them, we separate out mechanical royalties. Mechanical royalties is a term we use, and it can be used a little bit different around the world. It's the reproduction and distribution of a song as a recording. So it's actually not just downloading. In the United States, a mechanical royalty is created when there are physical products sold, like vinyl and CD, but there's also a mechanical royalty when you have on-demand audio streaming, like Spotify or Apple Music. There is a mechanical created. There is also a mechanical when there is a download, but there is a mechanical for on-demand interactive streaming. And that goes through a new organization I'm a part of called the Mechanical Licensing Collective, because we had an important change in the US copyright law in 2018 that recognized that the way that particular kind of licensing was being handled was not very efficient. It wasn't working well. A lot of people were not getting paid. It needed reforming with a new approach. And then the third kind of society we have in the United States is what most of the rest of the world calls a neighboring rights society. We actually don't use the term neighboring rights very often in the United States. But it's sort of related to copyright, but may not be copyright law depending on the country. They collect royalties for the public performance of sound recordings. And depending on where you are in the world, that might include things like being played on the radio. Or it might include what we call non-interactive streaming, like digital radio, where you can't pick the exact recording, you can just pick the station or the channel. And in the United States, we have something called Sound Exchange that does that. So in other parts of the world, you often see the Performing Rights, the Mechanical Rights Society as one organization that collects all of that. And there might be a separate neighboring rights organization. They pay very different people. The Performing Rights and Mechanical Rights organizations are generally paying rights holders involved in the composition of the song. Perhaps the rights holders, the songwriters, composers, music publishers. The neighboring rights societies are paying the performing artists on that sound recording, the recording artist, and the record label. And so they are paying different kinds of people. And so often in other countries, the neighboring rights society will be separate from the performing rights society that might be combined with mechanicals. So when you're looking across the world to understand how this works, you know, it's not exactly the same in every country. You have to look a bit deeper to say which kinds of monies are flowing through these kinds of organizations and for which kinds of uses of music and the song or the sound recording, which one are they collecting for? So it's a little bit different everywhere. It can be confusing. And then lastly, there are several organizations that serve as sort of a global umbrella organization that, you know, they don't necessarily have like governmental oversight, but they create best practices, common practices, facilitate the sharing of data and the routing of money around the world that exist over some of these different kinds of organizations. And that's how they all kind of come together and share best practices and data for making this work across borders. So I thought I'd just give a little quick refresher of basics, especially if I got some students in the room who may not have learned all of this. We've thrown a lot of terminology out at you that maybe some of it made sense, maybe a lot of it didn't. So that's a quick little overview.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, and yeah, it's really, I think, puts in sharp relief some of the real differences that we're talking about here between the systems, the East and West systems. But at the same time, you know, there's actually, as you said, many of the concepts are the same. Many of the ways in which the business is approached may have local cultural nuances, but also many similarities. What I want to do is I want to be sure we have enough time for questions or comments. Yeah, please.
Can I just add something to this overall? Do you want to use the microphone?
Oh, yeah.
Recording. I just want to add some perspective to this overall management and rights management, the East and West. We should look at, we should consider, in the West, music publishing started at all, that they're actually publishing books, chapel. Now, in the East, in those days, Western music, pianos and all are for very, very so rich people. This is Western music. Traditional music is not written, there's no publishing. So publishing came after recordings. So in the 50s, you have all the sound recordings. And when these record companies buy songs, they don't create a new publishing company. They buy. That's why you get this outright assignment. So they just buy over the songs and then they create, they do a recording. In different countries, music publishing started in different periods. Hong Kong is probably one of the first. Well, you can't talk about Japan. I think countries like Indonesia, okay, then in about 1993, the majors decided to sign an MOU saying that music publishers will be paid royalties, mechanical royalties. And in some countries, I think Indonesia, for example, didn't have a collecting society for performing rights. That's when the Indonesian Performing Rights Society was formed. Korea had KUMKA already, I think. But Taiwan also, and that's the early stages of music publishing performing rights. So that's basically, so we've got to look at it in perspective. So it's kind of reverse in that sense. That's where you get all your outright assignment and all. And that may also be some of the problems you're seeing in terms of the registration, your identification issues, because the songs were bought outright in those days. They never needed to care very much about it. Thanks.
Please.
Thank you for the insight. I also want to add something different in Eastern in Asia. About on-demand video streaming, on-demand in interactive streaming, while in the USA is that as mechanical royalty.
Actually, in the US, confusingly enough, for on-demand interactive audio streaming, audio, there's a mechanical. For on-demand interactive video streaming, we don't refer to it as a mechanical. There is a performance royalty, and then there is also, and the terminology is, this practice is so new that we haven't even completely agreed on the terminology. Some people will call it micro synchronization or mini synchronization or social video. But it's like a synchronization style license that has an ongoing royalty combined with public performance. But in the US, when we use the term mechanicals, it's audio only, does not include any of those video uses.
So is that some royalty for the synchronization?
Yes. So a video with music playing on a service like YouTube creates two sets of money. One flows to the performing rights organization, the PROs, and the other goes directly to the music publisher, effectively, or the publishing administrator who has made a deal directly with that video platform.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Maybe I will keep in touch with you.
Absolutely. It's insanely complicated.
Other questions? Sorry. Other questions in the room, from the room, in the audience? Please, in the hat here first. Yeah. That's all I can see from here.
Sorry, if I may ask specifically to Pak Dwiki, can I ask in Bahasa if that's okay, or should I?
Silakan.
Selamat sore Pak. Aku sebagai international student dari Indonesia cuma mau tanya, untuk dengan contoh artis seperti Nicki sama Rich Brian yang sekarang sudah masuk label internasional yaitu 88 Rising, apakah mungkin metode mereka untuk menjadi artis lebih global dengan memiliki kontrak dengan label internasional itu lebih ideal untuk artis-artis dari Indonesia, atau apakah lebih efektif untuk kita ikuti label dari negara kita sendiri?
Siapa namanya tadi?
Nadra.
Nadra is the student in Korea, from Indonesia, and her question is about one of renowned Indonesian artists, which is now rising in the USA, Rich Brian. How is the process to get managed by the US company management? As I know, I think it always came from Indie and control himself for the artistic things, but then the U.S. one of the U.S. artist management company, and asked him to have a contract with them and to manage more professional, more promotion, more international promotion, and he actually really start from in the room, from to make the content like in YouTube, and then look by the big management in the US. Thank you. Makasih, Mbak.
Thank you. And there was a question, the gentleman behind.
Okay, I just have a question to Sir Ronald. Because I know MLC actually was based on MMA. Yeah, I'm so curious because just like you say, the music ecosystem, licensing system is so complicated. So do you think what kind of role MLC will play and how can you really increase the revenue of the musical artist? Because he seems the price is pretty still a very hard question, how to decide the revenue, the price of music streaming. So do you have maybe any suggestion or maybe share any direction with us? Thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure. So as we mentioned, there was a change in the U.S. copyright law in 2018, the Music Modernization Act is what it was called. And it changed a number of things. One thing was it changed the way mechanical licensing for digital uses only works. Didn't change the way it works for physical products. It just changed the way it works for digital. And it mandated the creation of a collecting society, if you will, to collect these royalties from digital audio streaming, interactive streaming, and download services, and then pay that money out to rights holders. That's because prior to this change in the law, the way it worked, which is still how it works for physical products like CDs and vinyl, is we have what we call a work-by-work licensing model. And what that means is whether you're the record company or if you were the digital service before the change in the law, for every single recording you wanted to use, you had to research who are the music publishers of this song that's in this recording, and then either contact them to ask for a license, or in some circumstances, you might have been entitled to a license as a matter of law, but you still had to send notice to those publishers. And that's not a process that I would call scalable, right? Spotify now reports getting more than 100,000 new recordings uploaded to their service per day. Work-by-work licensing does not work efficiently for that kind of volume, okay? So the law came along, said we need to change this. Now Spotify gets one blanket license. It's a license as a matter of law. We call that a compulsory license, but they have to follow a bunch of rules to keep that license. And instead, there's now one central organization, the MLC, that has to try and find all of those publishing rights holders, get them to sign up with the MLC, get them to register their songs with the MLC so that the MLC can pay them. So it has created a lot more efficiency because not only was Spotify having to do this work-by-work licensing, but so was all of Spotify's competitors, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Every service had to do the same sort of thing, not efficient. So we have seen a significant efficiency improvement in that way. I think what the MLC has done, so the MLC is not a government organization, it is a nonprofit, but it is heavily regulated by the law. And it is only allowed to do a particular kind of licensing, and that's it. It can't look for business opportunities to expand what it does. It's very limited in its scope by law. So there's only so much the MLC can do to change the landscape in terms of, you know, bringing more efficiencies by saying, well, let's do more than mechanical licensing. Let's do other kinds of licensing. It's not allowed by law to do that. What we have done at the MLC that we're very proud of is we have put more effort into educating than any of the other societies really had. And we don't just educate about what the MLC does. We realized very early on that we couldn't give a presentation and say, the MLC does this. Everybody good? Because then everybody instantly was confused and said, but what about performing rights organizations? And what about neighboring rights and sound exchange? Can you explain those to us as well? So what we've found is a lot of our educational materials say not only what does the MLC do, but what do PROs do? What does Sound Exchange do? What are like checklists for creators of all the things they have to do to go and collect all of the money due to them, not just what comes from the MLC. And so I think the MLC has very much adopted the approach and hired a full-time educator. No other organization actually has like hired somebody who is a teacher for a living. Which is a sign, you know, it indicates how serious we take education at the MLC. So much of what we do is educating about how the whole ecosystem works and all of the things that creators need to do to get paid, including a bunch of things that have nothing to do with the MLC. The MLC actually has no role in advocating for the royalty rates. The royalty rates that are paid by services like Spotify to the MLC and then the MLC pays rights holders, that's something that is a royalty rate we call the statutory royalty rate because it's set by a panel of 3 federal court judges. They're called the Copyright Royalty Board, and they set these rates every 5 years. And there's a whole process of this rate setting proceeding where rights holders come, it's sort of like a court trial. Rights holders come, present evidence, testimony, experts, economists, and say, the rate should be this. And then the digital services come with their experts and their economists and say, the rate should be that. And then the judges decide it. The MLC, by law, is not allowed to take an advocacy role in that procedure. We can provide information if we're required to or requested by any party, but we actually the law does not allow us to have an advocacy role, which is different than, for example, Sound Exchange, the neighboring rights society in the US, has more leeway to do that. So there's very limited things the MLC can do because of all the regulations that limit what we're doing. And so what we have been able to do is lean into education and help people understand all the ways they need to collect their money so they're not leaving anything on the table, even if it's not flowing through the MLC. Hopefully that answered the question.
We were scheduled to be done at 12:15, is that correct? So I think that does it for our panel. Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists and to my co-moderator, Young. And I'll hand it back over to Sean then.
Okay, thanks. It was a fantastic panel. Let's give them a big round of applause. I'm standing here, hopefully Maru's in the back. I don't actually know where we're going for lunch, but we're not doing a lunch in here, I presume. Okay, so let's leave this room now. We will be guided to the lunchroom. We will reconvene there, get your lunch, and then we will move into the fireside chat. See you all shortly.